great, and we're very, very happy to be here to bring more helpful tips. I'm Alexandra, and I'm the host of the VUCAST, the virtual podcast. Podcast that for a person who is deaf or hard of hearing and their tribe. Bear with me with my sign, a little rusty. Anyway, my guest is Kori Longbons is the person who is hard of hearing. Oh, okay. Thank you for the question. It's Longbons, and the person who is hard of hearing is a senior shift, like in her company, and she's the supervisor. Welcome, Kori.
Thank you.
Excited to see you and come in, and want to take over, talk about your role, and maybe share your experience and tips.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kori, and I'm a senior shift supervisor with my company called CDS, and we work inside of Costco, passing out samples. We have been in business for many years. I have been a senior supervisor since January of this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We'd love to hear a little more about the kind of tip for you have for the deaf or hard of hearing to advocate themselves at work. What should they say? What should they do?
So for me, the main thing that I do is tell everyone that I'm hard of hearing and partially deaf, mainly because sometimes I cannot hear when someone is asking me questions and they're not getting a response. So I explain to my staff that I'm hard of hearing. They have to look at me when talking, and they have to make sure that they're talking loud. I just explain my needs of a hard of hearing person, because for a hearing person, it's easier to understand everyone, but when I'm at work, I can't understand everyone. So for me, my biggest thing is to make sure you're really advocating for yourself at work. If you are a supervisor and you're hard of hearing, I really, really recommend that you inform all of your staff about your hearing loss. That way, when you're not answering people, they don't come back angry asking, why aren't you answering me? They already know that you can't hear them really well. So for me, I try to make sure that whenever someone has to communicate with me, that they're looking at me. Even with the mask on, I made sure that they're talking loud enough that I can understand them. But if I miss something, I have to let them know I've missed it and you need to do it again. So it is not, for me, it's not an issue having people ask their questions again. I've never had a problem with that in the past. Most of the time, people are very understanding that I'm hard of hearing, and they know that I'm in a role of authority. So they have to listen to what I'm telling them so that we can all communicate effectively. And for hard of hearing or maybe completely deaf people, that are in like a supervisor role, I've been doing some research this week, and I have an app on my phone. I know that most people have cell phones now, but I have an app that is called Transcribe.
Transcribe for the iPhone. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on Android because I don't have an Android, but Transcribe is closed captioning. So when you're with a person and you can't understand them, you can open up your phone with Transcribe and you can talk into the phone. And what you're saying will be captioned. But it's not free, but it's worth the money. It is really worth the money. It's cheap. You pay for minutes, but it's very cheap and very easy to use. I have not yet needed it at work because most of my employees understand that I can't hear and I have no problems communicating, but I have that app if I ever run into a problem. And I really recommend this app because for me, it is almost 100% perfect with captions.
More about accuracy. So
Yes.
So what should they suggest the boss to help them include in the team meeting? So you're saying that live Transcribe would be the best suggestion. I mean, how work with the team meeting, you know, now everyone's home, or in your case, you are in at work. Some people are at home. How do you know, what's your recommendation to tell the boss?
Well, with the cell phone, if you work from home and you have a work computer at home, the cell phone will pick up. It will hear what's being said on the computer. So if your computer is up loud enough for you to hear, Transcribe will pick up the words and it will caption it. So yeah. So you don't even have to tell your boss, oh, I have to use this app to hear you. No, because if you turn up the computer loud enough, it will pick it up. And I have used my computer with it before.
Suppose the person is not a boss, but the employee, you know, let's say I am the worker, and so how you explain it to new, I'm hard of hearing, and that what did you found that worked best in the team project?
So when for me, it may sound a little mean, but it's how I have to do it. I have to ask people to talk one at a time.
Okay.
Because like Wednesday, there were 7 people in the room, and all of them were talking, not with me, but when they started talking to me, everyone else was talking, and just you have to ask people to talk one at a time, because otherwise you're gonna miss everything. If you want to pick up and hear everything or understand everything, you have to ask people to talk one at a time. I've had no issues or problems with that. I feel really comfortable doing that. So I don't think that other people should be scared of that, because you're advocating for yourself. You're advocating for your hearing loss. You want to understand what is being said in the room, you know?
Understood. That's interesting. Yes, that's a good point that you made, to ask everyone to pick one at a time. That's good. What have you found work for you when you starting your career? What worked for you?
So what really helped me out starting this career, and this is a job that I really love. This was my like dream job. So for me, is learning to communicate, because I started out in the company as a sales advisor. So I didn't have to worry about having to hear everyone or understand them, because I was one of them. So I've had to learn to communicate and speak up for myself, because I wanted this job, and I wanted to be sure that I understand everyone that I communicate with, and I want them to feel heard. So I have to communicate with people and tell them, hey, I'm hard of hearing. You have to understand, if you're not looking at me, you may not have an answer. You may not get a reply. And my biggest issue at work is when people are talking behind me. I have one of my employees that does that a lot, and I cannot hear him. And he's finally, after 3 months, learned to stop doing that. So, but I think the biggest thing for me is learning to communicate, being brave to speak up and say, hey, I can't hear well. I'm hard of hearing. I'm deaf here and I'm hearing here. So this is how I prefer to communicate. And I think that if you're going for your dream job, that if you are in a supervisor role, you need to tell them what you need. You need to tell your staff what you need in order to communicate, and you need to tell your boss what you need in order to communicate.
That's really important. Yeah.
Yes.
Communication is really important. Yeah. How should the employee talk with hearing people about the mask? How does an employee talk to hearing or hard of hearing, like hearing people about the mask? So if they see a hard of hearing or deaf person with the mask, how are they being trained to communicate with hearing people?
Yes. For me, I learned that if I tell a person that I'm hard of hearing and the mask covers their lips, my main way of communicating is reading lips. Sometimes people will have to take their mask down so I can read their lip and put it back up, but that's rare. It's really rare right now, because most employees have learned to speak up, like talk louder so I can hear them. And I think that's one thing that a deaf or hard of hearing person can do, is ask them to speak up. I don't think it's going to be a big issue, because I've never had a problem with it. So, but
yeah,
right.
It probably depends on what state you were in or where, and the mask is the issue. Yeah, understood. What resource do you recommend or suggest at the workplace that have on hand? You understand what I said? And what resource do you suggested?
So like I said, the Transcribe is what I would recommend. But if there's an issue like with communicating, especially between a boss and an employee, I have heard that using a VRS interpreter works. They may not hear right. Yes. So the interpreter may not hear too well, but if you both communicate clear enough, they will understand, and they can communicate. The interpreter can communicate with the deaf person and talk to the hearing person. So that's what I've been That's what I've been hearing works at some places. But for me, my office is in a little room, and the Wi-Fi is really bad.
Oh,
So
wow.
for me, that's why I have the Transcribe.
Oh, wow. Like the Wi-Fi
Yeah.
is not good, and it's
Right.
not enough to. Wow, that must be hard
Yes.
for you to hear, even though it's a small room. Wow,
Yeah.
I understand. It can be limited where you can be in the office if where you work, not limited, but like if you're in like a corporate office, that it's a little bit more flexible. You have your own
Right.
room. Yeah. So is that how do we get the company to pay for the resources for you? You know, for a hard of hearing person, how do we get them to pay, or I guess the resources that is required for you to fit your job?
Well, I live in the state of Illinois, and in Illinois, it's one of the requirements. You must provide ADA services. So if a deaf or hard of hearing person was to ask for interpreters or ask for assistance with anything, it would be free to them for no charge, but it may not be free for the company. That's why I recommended the VRS interpreter and the app, because if you want services like communication right now, you may not have time to find like an interpreter or something like that. But in the state of Illinois, if you ask for an interpreter or ask for services related to hard of hearing, stuff like that, it's the law here that the company provides for that. And if I recall, it's really not that expensive to a company to provide for the deaf here in Illinois. I've never heard of any issues providing to the deaf here, like with the ADA laws.
But why I sometimes managers feel, oh, we're spending money if not using it, but whether like free is available for anyone who is hard of hearing like that. Sometimes
Right.
they don't understand. Some managers don't understand that it's required, and they're trying to like save money, the budget. When it's really
Right.
cheap, they don't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you train your employee to understand your deafness? I mean, to work with a boss who is hard of hearing. How did you do it?
So when we have a new person come in and we hire them and start training them, if they stay more than a day or two, I start teaching them that I'm hard of hearing. And I explain to them, I'm hard of hearing, so you have to be looking at me, and please don't talk behind me because I'll never hear you. And I always tell an employee to make sure they're looking at me and to make sure they have my full 100% attention, because if they don't, I may not hear them at all. So I just explain my needs as a hard of hearing person that I don't think is too hard for a new employee to learn, because if they want to communicate with me and communicate effectively, they need to learn that if I'm deaf or hard of hearing, that this is how I communicate and my preferences. So most of the time when I tell new employees that I'm hard of hearing, they are shocked because I communicate so well, it doesn't sound like I'm hard of hearing. So, yeah.
Very, very good. That's good to strategy. You said that.
Yes.
Wonderful. And is there anything you want to share that would be helpful for people to in the workplace, who are hard of hearing or deaf? And anything else you want to share with me, with us?
One thing I want to say is don't be afraid to tell people that you're hard of hearing or deaf. I know it can be scary, but be confident, be brave, and don't feel scared. If you communicate a specific way, make sure that the new person that you know understands that, because not only do you want to work, you also want friends in the company. For me, this company is like my family. So it's really easy to understand what I need, So don't be scared to communicate your needs. Don't be scared to tell people that you're deaf or hard of hearing. Just be brave and be confident. I just want people to feel strong and not so scared when, even if they're a boss, to not be scared to tell people how you need to communicate and how your employees need to communicate with you.
True. I love that you said that. And there are times that people get nervous how to communicate with someone who is hard of hearing or deaf. Just never encounter
Right.
with someone that never experienced deaf or how that it's a shock. So
Yes.
it's an amazing encouragement for deaf or hard of hearing. Sometimes they feel like they've been put down or mocked, and how to encourage that. That's a wonderful encouragement. Thank you so much for that. Wow, just a very simple tip.
Yep.
Thank you so much. We covered everything. Thank you so much, Kori. I'm like, be sure that you look at our website. Look at under VUCAST, and
Okay.
if you have other information that you want to drop it in, we can put it on for you.
Okay.
And you have any idea or any other person that want to share their experience, invite them to our website and like us. Click on to subscribe, and they say see you next time. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.